So there are a lot of research articles that have been written about Oviedo and the fact that this was a time when people were just beginning to illustrate nature as nature. If you look at the herbals, all of this is happening post-Gutenberg. So Oviedo is at the beginning of the modern methods of portraying natural history. Curiously, those notes don't all exist anymore, but the ones that do exist, some of those are at the Huntington in the manuscript vaults of the Huntington, and indeed among those is the very first illustration, Oviedo's personal hand-drawn illustration of how he conceived a pineapple. And Oviedo himself said, you just cannot imagine this thing. I mean, here is a pineapple. And how do you describe this to someone who's never seen one before? You would logically do what I would probably do. You'd go take a picture of a pineapple. But you yourself have learned nothing. Because if I asked you then, without your phone, to sit down and explain a pineapple or draw a pineapple or tell me what you saw, my guess is you would not be able to convey that. However, had you taken a few minutes and looked at the pineapple and drawn a sketch of it, just made a simple drawing of it with some of the detail, and sent that along with the photo to your friend, when we sat down later and I asked you, tell me about a pineapple, you would have an extraordinary capacity to tell me more about a pineapple. And I think that's because your hand will have expanded the capacity of your eye. You have this incredible eye-hand capacity. And so I'm fascinated by these two images and these two people. I'm fascinated by the world in which Oviedo lived, a kind of he's living in a typographic world, and he's putting together a typographic motif, a typographic image of a pineapple. Maria Sibylla is living in a very different world. I don't think it's not simply an elegant and accurate illustration of a pineapple. Everything about it is enticing. So Oviedo's is just trying to explain something that he doesn't have words to explain. I think Sibylla is actually creating a viewpoint. That is, you should be paying more attention to this. I am not a good artist, okay? I cannot, no one is going to be sitting around waiting to purchase anything I've ever drawn. But I draw all the time. I draw not because I'm trying to create something that will make me famous or be sellable. I draw because it helps me either explain a point or it helps me understand what I'm trying to visualize. Okay, so for my master's work, I studied a group of orchids. They're called the yellow fringed orchids, and they're native to the eastern US. And I spent every summer for 3 summers in a place called Apalachicola National Forest studying these orchids because I was trying to determine what I could about a particular form that only showed up around there. It didn't show up anywhere else. Well, something like it showed up, and I was trying to decipher the mystery of this plant, which was called Chapman's orchid, named after a medical doctor who lived in Apalachicola called Dr. Chapman. So I was trying to figure that out, and so I had to take all of the plants that were involved in this complex relationship, and I decided I would have to draw each flower so that I could compare them in relative scale, and I could explain the physical differences that led to how they were pollinated. I sat about in my clunky way, and I took graph paper because I'm having to draw this to scale, and I want to make sure that I get all the things right. And I didn't take an image and project it on a paper and trace it because it's 3-dimensional. You can't quite do that. So I sat down and drew them all, and I was taking my drawings to discuss them with a really excellent taxonomist, Dr. Bob Kroll at Vanderbilt, which is where I was working. And Bob looked at the illustration. He said, "There's no way that flower looks like that." And I'm flabbergasted because I'm thinking like, I sat there for hours, labored over this pencil, drawing, erasing, because I'm not a good artist, right? I can't just do this. And I sit there for hours, and I have looked at this flower, and I have drawn it, and all the dots connect, and all the points connect. So the good thing is, I'm very confident that I'm right. And so I'm showing him this illustration, and he's saying, "They don't look like that." And I said, "Well, you may look for yourself." So we're in an herbarium. An herbarium is like a library, but it's hundreds and thousands of sheets of paper with plants glued to them. So Dr. Kroll gets up from his desk, walks over to the cabinet where the orchids are. He pulls this out, he pulls out a sheet, and he's looking at the sheet. And he was stunned. He said, "I can't believe this. That's how it looks." I had never, because he's collected the plant, he's seen it before, but he's never sat down and drawn it. Probably the biggest inertial barrier for someone is, "I'm not an artist, I can't do it." It's like someone saying, "I can't do math and I can't do science." Well, of course, can't never could. So we're not asking you to be the next Dürer or the next Leonardo da Vinci. What I'm asking you to do is to use drawing as your way of confirming and building your own knowledge. You don't ever have to show them to anybody. But think back to the earliest times and what remains of ancient worlds that we're able to latch onto: cave paintings, petroglyphs, hand-fashioned pottery, arrowheads, all of that, everything that is left is something that was made with someone's hands.